Welcome back to a Criminally Basic podcast. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Megan.
Hello, everyone. Before we actually begin, I am going to get into something. This case is a very sensitive topic for us covering it, but also the community in which it happened in. So this is a very high-profile case. I no means approve of what Chris did, but I also don't want to take away from how amazing his wrestling career was. And I'm not going to deny that it was amazing, but we're not going to ignore how horrible this case was. So, if you don't want to hear about all of this, please just step off now. We've acknowledged it. We know it's great. Okay, Megan, are you ready for this?
I am so ready.
Okay. The case we are doing today is the case of Chris Benoit, Nancy and Daniel Benoit. So I don't know if you've ever heard or remember seeing about this at all, Megan?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, a little bit about Chris Benoit. We're going to have to go through a lot of stuff, so I apologize. And also, we might have to have, commentary breaks for me to explain some of this stuff, because not a lot of it, but there's some wrestling mumbo-jumbo in here that, we're going to go over it. So if you've heard this before, we're sorry. Okay. Chris Benoit was born Christopher Michael Benoit on May 21st, 1967 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, but grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Later in Edmonton, he would go on to train with Stu Hart of the legendary Hart Dynasty in the Hart Dungeon. People describe Chris as a very quiet, reserved guy. Dean Malenko, who's one of his really close friends, or was one, he would describe him as very focused and a perfectionist. He was described as a gentle giant by Vicky Guerrero, who is the wife of his late best friend Eddie Guerrero. Chris did have a bit of a breakdown after Eddie died. Eddie died very suddenly.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so his death was very sudden. Chris went on to win every title you can imagine in this business. So you name it, he's won it. Very accomplished wrestler. So a little bit about Nancy, who was Chris's wife. Nancy was born Nancy Elizabeth Toffolani on May 17th, 1964 in Boston, Massachusetts. Nancy had a younger sister named Sandra, who was 10 years younger than her, who we'll talk about a little bit later on. Sandra would describe her as the biggest influence in her life. Nancy actually got involved with wrestling because of her first husband. He was a huge wrestling fan. They went to an event, and she was noticed by a promoter, and that's how she got in. So a promoter is someone who just makes the events. They hire people. If you don't know already by now, wrestling's totally fake. Not like the athleticism, of course. It's extremely athletic, but the matches, they're planned out ahead. Storylines planned out ahead. Even who wins is planned out ahead. Nothing's random in this business. She was a valet, which, if you don't know, it's one of the really pretty girls that walks them to the ring, but she's actually very influential in helping the storyline along that they're creating. So she'll rile the crowd up or do something like that just to get the crowd or the opposing opponent distracted or something. It's actually a really important thing. They don't have it as much now anymore, but they used to back in the 80s and 90s when she was doing it. Funny story. That's actually what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Oh, wow.
For a very long time, until I was I don't want to actually wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't, but she did later on. But Nancy was a really good one. She was known for actually bringing more women into the wrestling business. Nancy was described as sweet and caring, but didn't take any crap from anyone. No one had a bad thing to say about her. Everyone loved her. If someone had a rip tight, she was there with a needle, sewing it back up. She was always on her game. And just an all-around amazing person. So, after she divorced her first husband, Nancy would go on to marry Kevin Sullivan, who was a wrestling promoter at WCW at the time that he and Nancy were working at, as well as Chris. They were together for almost a decade, but only married for 4 to 5 years. Kevin's character in all this WCW stuff was a Satanist. He wasn't in real life. Like I said, entirely fake. Also, me saying this sounds like it's very random. It will be played into very later on in this story. So, just keep that in the back of your head for a little bit. Kevin really liked Nancy, and they hit it off right away. She was his valet. Her sister would say she loved it because people would come up to her. Her character was called the Fallen Angel, and people would come up to her in gas stations and be like, "Hey, can we pray for your soul?" Yeah, all over, and she would let them, but she knew then she was doing her job very well.
Yeah.
So she would laugh at it. She thought it was really funny.
I mean, that is kind of funny.
It is very funny, honestly. Kevin, was really big into keeping the wrestling business looking real, because back at the time, they wanted it to look real. They wanted it to look not like it was fake, that we all know it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, not saying that athleticism is fake, but some of the storylines were a little sketchy, honestly.
Yeah.
Not in that's for a different podcast, but yeah. So Nancy actually met Chris through her husband at the time, where he set up a storyline where Nancy, who her character at the time had changed from the fallen angel to the woman, leaves Kevin for his arch rival, Chris.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, they didn't plan out for it to actually happen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, this is going to be some shade on the wrestling business, but it's not, there's no statistics proving it. But that has happened multiple times in this business. And you can Google it and find it.
Huh.
That's just some tea for you. Okay, back to my tangent. Okay, there's a joke in the business that Kevin Sullivan booked his own divorce. But yeah, no. Okay. At the time, Chris was going through problems with his wife, and Vicky Guerrero said in the Vice video, Nancy would go to Chris when she would have a bad day. And with Kevin booking them as that whole storyline thing, he made Nancy travel with him, stay in the same hotel building as him, all of this stuff.
Wow.
But from this documentary, and it wasn't really per se known until this documentary. It could have been, and I just didn't know it. But the documentary said that Kevin beat Nancy. Yeah. Chris would be the one to help her out through it and stuff. Chris reached out to Dean Malenko. His wife was, I think, a therapist, if I'm remembering correctly, or a counselor or something. And Chris asked her, hey, Nancy needs help with this. And she went and saw her and saw the bruises and stuff. So they took documents and pictures of it. So yeah. Kevin later goes on to deny that ever happened, but other people are saying otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kevin and Chris would later go on to have a match that ended up becoming real. They were doing a match, and you can see it going from a wrestling match to a fist fight. I think, I could be wrong, but I think you can still find the video online. If not, it showed some of the video in the Vice video.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. As soon as the match ended, they actually they didn't actually finish the match like a normal wrestling match would. They cut it to black. And they went backstage and they continued the fight back there.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, wild.
That sounds wild.
Yeah. So they have a family section for wrestlers and stuff, and they're like their wives, their kids, their all of that stuff.
Mhm.
Well, Sandra, Nancy's sister, and Kevin's daughter were signaled to go backstage. So, like, they assumed they were going home after that.
Mhm.
Well, keep in mind, Sandra had never met Chris before. That's her first time meeting Chris. And Kevin was like, okay, let's go home. And Sandra was like, okay, I'm going to go with my brother-in-law. And Chris was like, no, come here. Nancy said so. And she's like, dude, you're crazy. Like, I'm going with my brother-in-law.
Mhm.
Which, honestly, smart. If a random guy's like, come with me.
You don't go with the random guy.
Mm-mm. But then Chris is like, I'll call her. And he did. And Nancy's like, yeah, go with Chris. So she's like, okay.
Mhm.
When she got to where Nancy was, she was at her, I think, condo, if I'm not mistaken on that. She took one look at her sister, and her sister took her glasses off. She had, I think, sunglasses on. Visible bruises on her face.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And she's like, Kevin did this to me, and Chris helped me.
Ugh.
And so her sister that night helped her leave Kevin.
Yeah.
So in 1997, Nancy divorce from Kevin was finalized, and Chris and Nancy got engaged. When all this, like after she got engaged to Chris, she decided to take a break from wrestling so they could start a family.
Oh.
She's like, I love him. I want a baby.
Yeah.
At this time, she decided she was going to manage Chris's career.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, with her skills of being a valet, which is basically kind of a manager, she turned like those skills doing that into an actual career.
Good for her.
Yes. She gave birth to their son, Daniel Christopher Benoit, on February 25th, 2000.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, if you've seen, we'll post the pictures on our website. He is the cutest little boy ever. So sweet, Megan. Like, just like a little, like, bowl haircut kind of.
Oh.
And cutest little cheeks. And he's tiny, too.
Oh.
He's so cute. Oh. Well, it was really... So, okay, I got this information from Sandra's interview with Chris Jericho on his podcast. And she was talking about when Nancy was pregnant, she would eat 3 fish fillets a day. I'm like, and Chris, her husband, was mortified because he ate super clean and stuff. And he's like, I'll buy you real fish, all this stuff. And she's like, no, I want this. I'm pregnant. I want that.
Man, I haven't had dinner yet. Now I want a fish fillet.
I know, that sounds so good.
Right? I'm not a big McDonald's fan, but like, that's really all I want right now.
No, I'm not either, but like that and a sweet tea, oh my God, that sounds amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Ugh. Okay, I'm sorry about bringing that up now. But what's really sweet though is Chris had 2 children from his previous marriage. He had a little boy named David, who is actually in the Vice video, and he looks exactly like his dad. It's crazy. It's like he's a carbon copy. And then he also had a daughter named Megan.
Hey! Good choice. Good choice in name.
Very good choice. But she thought step was a dirty word, like stepmother,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she thought that was a dirty word. They were family. It melts my heart. It's so sweet.
Yeah, that sounds really sweet. That kind of commitment to saying, no, we are a family, even though we may not be related entirely by blood. That's really sweet.
So sweet. Well, okay. We're getting into the sad part. Slowly but surely.
Great.
This is not even the worst. Sorry. Yeah. Even though they got married in November 23rd, 2000. However, in May 2003, she filed for divorce, citing the marriage as irrevocably broken and alleging cruel treatment. Or she dropped the suit on August 2003, about 3 weeks after she filed. Sandra said in this, she was a person that actually helped them get back together. Apparently, Nancy and Chris had got into a big fight, and Chris hurt Nancy. Sandra said she wasn't sure if it was intentional or just a total accident. She wasn't sure, but he had apparently pushed her. So there wasn't really much said about that after.
Mm.
But what was said was, Nancy's like, she's been through that before. She's not doing it again. She's like, bye.
Yeah.
But Chris reached out to Sandra, and he's like, hey, I want to talk to her, blah, blah, blah. And Nancy's like, or not Nancy, I'm sorry. Sandra's like, okay, I guess. Well, they talked it out, and they were back together within a couple weeks. Yeah.
That was fast.
Very fast. Okay, now I'm sorry, we're going to get into the sad stuff.
That's okay. That's what we're here for.
Yep. Whew. Okay. So like I was saying with 4, Eddie's death had a very, very influential effect on Chris, and not in a good way either. That was his best friend. Like, if I lost my best friend, I would probably go hysterical too, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, definitely.
But he died very unexpectedly. He kind of had a downfall after that.
Oh.
Well, after Eddie died 2 years before this event happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I keep pushing it back, but we're going to talk more about it later in this episode. Saturday night, they were going to go to Laredo, Texas. Those people being Chris Benoit, Scott Armstrong, who is a referee for the WWE. I don't know if he still is. And Chavo Guerrero, who is the nephew of Eddie. Like I said, wrestling business is a big family business. Well, Chris didn't show up, but Chavo missed a call, and it was from Chris. So he calls Chris back, and Chris is like, oh, I'm not going to make it. And Chavo's like, well, what's wrong? Chris is like, Daniel and Nancy have food poisoning. I'm just trying to take care of them. And Chavo's like, oh man, are you good? Are you all right?
Mm-hmm.
Chris is like, yeah, I'm all right. Chavo's like, tomorrow we're in Houston. And Chris is like, okay, yeah, great. And then he tells Chavo he loves him. Which, it wasn't unusual for him to tell Chavo he loved him. But it was like, and I love you like it's your last.
Oh, no.
Yep. Chavo was like, oh, brother, I love you too. Not thinking anything of it. Chavo did think it was weird. And then he asked him, like, are you okay? And Chris is like, I'm okay, man, just really tired. And Chavo's like, well, okay, call me if you have any problems. And so he didn't think anything of it. Oh, no, it gets weirder, Megan. Buckle up, because we ain't even halfway done, Meg.
Oh, gosh.
Whew. So Chavo, at 5:30 in the morning, gets a text from Chris's phone. And keep in mind, cell phones then aren't like cell phones now.
Yeah.
So, like, the text said, the dogs are in the enclosed pool area and the back door is open. Chavo's half asleep, and he's like, he's not thinking anything of it because he's been to Chris's house before. He's helped with all that stuff. And, like, back then, apparently, because I don't know, I'm going off of another podcast that I listen to who are, I think, older. I don't want to assume, but, like, they sounded older in the sense of they knew about this cell phone technology that we do not know of.
Right.
He said in the podcast, they're like, oh yeah, like phones would like not deliver message and you'd get them like days later.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's happened to me even with modern technology. So yeah. I can't imagine what it was. I mean, I was alive in the early 2000s, but like, I don't really remember it.
I don't either. Yeah, well, he thinks nothing of it. He thought, oh, it's just one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Well, he gets a message from Nancy's phone saying the exact same thing. And then Chavo starts thinking, he's like, that's really weird.
Yeah.
But then he gets another one saying Chris's address, even though he knows his address. He knows it. He's picked him up before. It's fine. So Chavo just disregards it, thinking he's going to pick Chris up at the airport. It's going to be fine. Because they had a pay-per-view match that Sunday. So WWE has pay-per-view matches once a month. If I'm back in like early 2000s, they had them once a month. Could have changed now. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And what time did he get this text message?
5:30 in the morning.
Okay, so if you get a weird text message at 5:30 in the morning, at least if it were me, I wouldn't be thinking much of it because it's 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Unless you usually get up at that point, I don't think you're going to be very coherent.
No. And, like, usually wrestlers get up very early because, like, early morning workouts and stuff.
Right.
But, like, still, 5:30,
Yeah.
still a little, even if you're up, you're still very delirious.
Right.
I know from experience, you cannot talk to me at 5:30 in the morning. So he disregards it, thinking he's picking Chris up in the airport, whatever. So in the morning, Chavo and Scott go to get breakfast, and Chavo's, like, just talking about, like, what happened. He's like, did you get a weird text message from Chris? And Scott's like, well, I got one too. Yeah. And Chavo's like, well, what'd it say? Like, trying to figure out what he could. And then Scott told him the exact same thing that Chris had sent to him.
If it were one text, I would maybe excuse it. But since it was the same text to two different people, that's a little concerning.
Be ready, Megan. So they drive to their next show in Corpus Christi, Texas. Still no word from Chris. So the head of talent relations, Johnny Ace, asked Chavo, because he was supposed to show up for this pay-per-view event.
Yeah.
And, like, keep in mind, not that no showing's no good, but they have wrestlers stand by just in case, God forbid, something happens.
Right. I mean, anything can happen, especially when you're traveling. Flight gets delayed, flight gets canceled, you get stuck in traffic.
Yeah, anything. So they have, like, people for that. So Johnny Ace, he's like, hey, Chavo, because he knew Chavo was supposed to be, like, traveling with him. He's like, have you heard from Chris? Chavo's like, no. But then showed Johnny his phone and showed him the text messages. And Johnny's like, oh, why didn't you show me those yesterday? And he's like, Chavo was being a good friend, being like, I was covering for him.
Yeah.
He just thought they had food poisoning. And were, like, really bad sick. Like, he thought, yeah, something weird, but, like, you don't expect the worst. You, like, when you get weird text messages like that.
Yeah, of course not.
That's when they started to get concerned. Because after they started talking to people, no one had heard from Chris besides those texts. Like, no one at all. So, at 3 p.m. that Sunday, Vince McMahon, who is the owner and CEO of WWE, had someone call for a wellness check. And in the Vice documentary, you can hear them calling for a wellness check. Megan, take a sip of water. Hold on to your horses. It's about to get bad.
I'm ready.
Okay. When the officer got to the Benoit house, a neighbor, her name was Holly, I couldn't get her last name from the documentary, approached the officer, and was like, I haven't heard from them in a while. She told them that she looked after their dogs while they were away, which was true. And so she was worried. So she was asking him, like, were they okay and stuff? And they're like, they don't know. But instead of these officers doing the smart thing, they sent the neighbor in the back because, the dogs, they know her. They're not going to be threatened by her. She went in. She was the first to discover the bodies.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Daniel was the first body that was discovered. After Holly had discovered him, she ran out to the police and freaked out. The officer then went in to discover Nancy in her room and Chris hanging in his home gym. The police officer, there was multiple police officers there, but the female officer that discovered Chris, when she saw him in the gym, they had mirrors on the gym walls. In the reflection, she said something along the lines of, put your hands up. And the other officer was like, he's dead.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So here is what unfortunately happened to the Benoit family. On Friday, June 22nd, Chris Benoit killed his wife, leaving her bound at the ankles and wrist and covered with a sheet in a room in the corner of their home. It was actually their, I think, master bedroom, if I'm not mistaken. A Bible was left by her body. She had died of asphyxiation. She had bruises on her back and stomach consistent with Benoit pressing a knee into her back while pulling a cord around her neck.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. They think the phone call Chris had with Chavo, by that time Nancy and Daniel had already been dead by then.
That's chilling.
It gets worse.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. Daniel was suffocated by his own father in his bedroom. A Bible is left by the boy's body. However, it was revealed on June 27th that Chris Benoit may have killed his son with a chokehold, which is actually a move done in many different wrestling organizations.
Oh, great.
Well, back to what is it? Scott Baylord, who's the district attorney, said the boy had internal injuries to the throat area, but showed no bruises, indicating he may have been locked in the crook of his own father's arm. When this happened, Daniel had needle marks in his arm, suggesting that he may have been given growth hormones because Benoit and his family considered him undersized.
Excuse me?
1 second, yeah. This was theorized to be most likely the result of him suffering from Fragile X syndrome.
Okay, so were these hormones prescribed by a doctor, or were they obtained in a less than savory way and given to this poor kid because his parents had unreasonable expectations due to something that they couldn't control?
He actually didn't have any at all. There's no marks, no nothing. It is theorized that either WWE released that statement or somehow did that allegedly, or that the district attorney released it, mistaking something as something else. When you know as well as I do, you get an IV, you have a little mark in your arm forever.
Yeah.
It could have been something as that. Sandra actually had to go to his pediatrician and have it released and stuff that he did not have Fragile X syndrome. He did not have growth hormones. He was just small.
It sounds like something that someone heard somewhere or made up or misunderstood, and then it became a whole thing because it fit with the narrative.
Yep, absolutely. The district attorney actually had to release a statement saying that a source having access to Daniel's medical files received said files and found that they mentioned no pre-existing medical or physical ailments. Likewise, Daniel Benoit's educators report that Daniel was on par with other students and not about to be held back as previously thought. And like I said before, Sanders said that statement wasn't true, got his pediatrician records, everything. It was just, like you were saying, someone found it to fit their narrative. But just a small kid and just a quiet kid. Nothing more than that. That's all it was.
Yeah.
The predator, which was Chris Benoit, according to Scott Baylord, died of asphyxiation when he was found hanging by the cord of a weight machine in his basement. When Benoit released the weights, around 240 pounds, which is a hell of a lot.
Yeah, that is.
And weighed more than he did. I didn't look up how much he actually weighed, but he was not that big. He died of strangulation. He had no crime scene photos, but the way they described it, it was wrapped around his neck, and he had a towel around his neck too. So when it
was, and this may be too graphic, we may need to cut this out. Was the towel up against his skin and then the cord around it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, because that would make sense to me in kind of a twisted way, because the cord either A, could snap, I suppose,
yeah,
or B, really dig into his skin. And I'm assuming that since he wasn't jumping from a really high place, that the momentum was not enough to break his neck unfortunately, and that is super graphic, so we might just need to cut that out. But I mean, that in a very morbid, twisted way makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was a Bible left by both Daniel and Nancy. At the time of the murders, they didn't think there was a suicide note, but there was on Louisa. There was later one discovered by Chris. They had sent his belongings to Chris's ex-wife, and they actually found it in a Bible. And they really didn't go into what it said that much. So yeah. And like, even though Eddie had gotten Chris into religion, him and Nancy weren't very religious at all. They only went to really get Daniel into a good school to show their face, being like, hi, we're here.
Yeah.
But like, they weren't very religious, so they thought that was extremely odd. They described the crimes as brutal and vicious murder, showing signs of real rage. Because even though Nancy's didn't sound that graphic, Sandra said it was extremely graphic and there was blood everywhere.
Oh, goodness. That's just tragic.
Yeah. But leading up to this, Chris had really shown he wasn't the same. He was showing different emotions. And this is for well up to a year after this, or before this, I'm so sorry. Chris had started talking about wrestlers' kids that had been kidnapped. Yeah, apparently it happened. Yeah, this was a year or so before this happened. Fans that had went rogue, just random, like, becoming more and more paranoid.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And Nancy's like, oh, it's up to the business. Like, it's like, she just staked it up as all that just because he was at this time the world heavyweight champion and really famous.
Wow.
Like, they couldn't walk through Disney World without getting stopped at least 3 or 4 times. Like, they were extremely famous by that time. So Nancy just stocked it all up to just the business. Like, he's protecting us. Like, she just thought it was that. Chris had started taking different ways to the gym in different cars. And they had been going to this gym for years. It wasn't like a new one. They've been going there for years.
Yeah, it sounds like his mental state is really deteriorating.
It gets worse. He wouldn't let Nancy go out past 6 p.m. He wouldn't.
Don't like that.
Nope. He wouldn't let Daniel go outside because he felt like someone was watching the family and that someone was stalking him. Nancy told Vicky that Chris was irritable. He didn't want to talk to her. They were getting in fights for no reason. He was mad all the time and at life in general. Mostly his family and friends noticed that, but he got so closed off after Eddie died. They really attribute a lot of the sadness and mood change to Eddie dying because his best friend gone all of a sudden. When Nancy went and stayed with Vicky for about a few months after Eddie died, because they were very close friends. And when Chris would come back from traveling, he would lay on Eddie's side of the bed holding his pillow, crying hysterically.
Oh, man.
And keep in mind, Chris is not a very emotional guy. He was very reserved. And you're just seeing this big, strong guy. Not saying big, strong guys can't cry, but Chris didn't cry.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole topic of men not being permitted societally to feel their emotions, which is a whole other topic, but
absolutely,
it is chilling when you see someone who is so strong, both physically and emotionally, breaking down over something that has truly devastated them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Chris Jericho at the funeral was hugging him, and he cried so hard, Chris Benoit did, that it went through his jacket into his shirt, got wet because he was crying that much.
Oh, that just breaks my heart. Yeah,
and like he had to fly off to a wrestling event right after the funeral.
Man.
Yeah. That's the thing. They make comparisons between Eddie and him a lot because Eddie and Chris gave their life to this business. And that's what, there was something, I think Chris Jericho said this. Chris's first and last paycheck was from wrestling. He had never worked another job.
Wow.
And they also said he was worried about, because you can't physically wrestle for the rest of your life. You really can't. It's like, it's very hard on your body, especially the time when Chris was wrestling, because there was chair shots, cage matches, you name it. Like, they were putting their bodies through absolute hell. And so he was worried that, like, he couldn't do this forever. But which Nancy had already figured it out. They were going to open Chris Benoit's wrestling school. And she had 500 t-shirts printed. It was planned out. Sandra even said she's sitting on 500 wrestling shirts right now of a school that never happened.
Oh.
Yeah. But Nancy really wanted Chris to step away. She's like, she saw what it was doing to him, and she's like, she wanted him to step away. She thought it would be good with everything that went on that year. Later, Chris Jericho even called Chris Houdini because he would just disappear all the time. It's kind of funny, but like, you could tell he was slowly becoming a hermit. This is something extremely eerie that happened with everything. 14 hours before anyone knew the murders had happened, someone had changed Chris's Wikipedia page to say that Nancy had died. 14 hours. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say that's eerie. Very.
Well, the FBI and, it was actually the GBI, but like same difference. They investigated it, and they tracked it back to Hartford, Connecticut, which is where the headquarters of WWE is.
That's freaky.
And that plays into, and I don't talk about this as much because this is already such a long episode, but there was theories that someone in the WWE did it, when in reality, it just turned out to be some guy playing a sick joke that he just, and it got around the pay-per-view. Chris wasn't there because of family issues. Because they thought at the time it was food poisoning.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just made assumptions, I guessed.
Yeah, unfortunate assumption with unfortunate timing.
Yes. And it turns out this guy had edited a bunch of random WWE articles and like a bunch of other ones just.
So he's just one of those people.
Yeah, one of those people. And he just very unfortunately picked the wrong time.
Yeah. Can you imagine though? Like, I mean, I don't know how that guy felt or feels, but I would feel awful.
Oh, I would too. And then be a part of that investigation?
Yeah.
I would be like worried out of my mind. Another thing, involving computers, they searched Chris's computer after it all happened, being like, oh, like, what's going on with this, blah, blah, blah. It turns out Chris had searched up how the quickest way to hang yourself. And then also the Bible story of, I couldn't quite remember which one it was, but as of a boy being resurrected.
Lazarus?
Yes.
I know my Bible, y'all.
Yeah. But yeah, and those are the two things on his search engine.
Oh, that's also just really tragic. I mean, anytime anyone looks up how to kill themselves, that is just so sad and so tragic. But the fact that the story of Lazarus was also one of the last things that he searched, at least to me as a Christian, that is such a powerful story. And I mean, I don't know what his mental state was at the time, but that just leaves me with chills.
It was not very good, to say the least. There was moments of, they suspect of him going in and out of like coherentness. So at one point he was trying to rebook his flight and stuff to get to these events when he had already killed his wife and son. So yeah, we're gonna now talk about the response WWE had, which, that's a whole thing on itself. It's wild. When this first happened, they just knew they were dead. They didn't know it was a murder-suicide. They didn't know. So what WWE did was they canceled their live televised show that night, and they held a tribute for him and his family. And there was all of these wrestlers talking about how much they love Chris, how much, like we talk about how they were pillars of their community, Chris was with wrestling.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Chavo was even on there talking about how much he loved Chris. He would trust Chris with his life, his children's life, all of his stuff. And then it's kind of eerie. William Regal, who's still a wrestler, well, he's not a wrestler, he's a general manager with the WWE now, but he was a wrestler at the time. He, in the interviews talking about Chris, he almost knows something else is happening. He's very, I don't want to say vague with his statement, but it's like, oh yeah, Chris was an amazing wrestler and stuff, but he knew something else was going on. And he lived in the same town as Chris. So he knew about the fights with Nancy and all of that. He knew about it all. And, well, WWE found out it was a murder-suicide, not an accident or something, 26 hours later. And at the time, when they were doing the tribute, the police already knew it was a murder-suicide.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So they basically glorified a murderer.
Yeah, I mean, that, you can't really blame them because they didn't know all the details and everything. And from the sounds of it, those close to him knew that something was happening, but
they didn't think it was murder. They didn't think it was murder. They just thought something as, not saying carbon monoxide isn't horrible.
Right.
But like something, carbon monoxide, like something like that.
Yes, a different kind of tragic, not a man-made crime.
Yeah. Well, after they found that out, they released a statement apologizing for that. And by then, within the week, they scrubbed everything of Chris Benoit out of existence in WWE.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you cannot find him anywhere on the website, on the app. You can find him stuff on YouTube, but like not from WWE. They were made, if a WWE superstar went in an interview, you didn't bring it up. You didn't mention it or Chris. You did not, like, you wiped it out of existence. Which there's a lot of debates now with wrestling fans. They want him in the Hall of Fame because he is an amazing wrestler. I will not deny that. But they look over the fact he murdered Nancy and his son in a very rageful way. It wasn't, this sounds horrible, it wasn't just he poisoned them or something. It was brutal murder.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like what a lot of people, especially in the arts community, kind of go through when someone like an actor or a director or something is, I guess, outed, for lack of a better term, as a horrible person who has, committed atrocities against other people. And it's hard to distance their art or their sport from who they are as a person, because oftentimes they are so intertwined that you really can't.
Oh, absolutely. And there's literally, you can find on Facebook, Chris Benoit is innocent. Put Chris Benoit in the Hall of Fame. Put him and Daniel in it. That's the only way it would be right. The only way it would be right if you put Nancy in it, and that's it.
I mean, there's no doubt that he did it, though, right?
No. There's a bunch of, I hate to use this word, but a bunch of crackpot theories of Kevin Sullivan did it because he was mad at Nancy for leaving him. And, keep in mind, that was 10 years after.
Yeah.
If he would have done something, he would have done it within the year or so.
Right.
Not 10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, typically, and especially with domestic violence, it can occasionally happen where, someone who is bitter and angry will come back years later and enact violence on their ex-partner. But most of the time, yeah, it happens within the year.
Yeah. And there's mention of oh, someone was in Chris's house when he was on the phone with Chavo breaking in. And Chris may have been small for WWE standards, but, like, he could have kicked their ass. Like, it wasn't like he was a small, weak guy.
Right. I would expect any WWE wrestler to be able to kick anyone's ass.
Oh, absolutely. So it's not like he could have not fought them off. He absolutely could have. And even by the time he had called, Nancy and Daniel were already dead. Yeah, in the video, JR said shame on them for not knowing everything, because they didn't know everything at the time. Yeah. And, like, they had to do it for their fans.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say because they didn't know.
Right.
In some ways, they should have waited.
Yeah, it's a difficult choice. And I mean, you know, you even said that he was a pillar in that community. Mm-hmm. And when a pillar of a community is tragically taken from this earth, you know, you want to come together as a community to mourn that person. And this is just a personal opinion. I don't really blame them for doing that. And I mean, I think it's good that they took all of his stuff down and, you know, are no longer associated with him, because no matter how great his wrestling career was, he murdered 2 people. That's not okay.
And okay, glad you mentioned that, because there is a wrestler that allegedly murdered someone, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go into it too much now because I want to do that for a later episode, because I find it really interesting, that whole case. Mm-hmm. But people use that as an excuse.
Is it alleged or is it proven, though?
Technically it is alleged.
Okay.
They now, after all this, in 2008, they went from PG-14 to PG. So they now pride themselves on being a family-friendly entertainment. Mm-hmm. So how would that look if 20 years from now, a company that prides themselves on family-friendly entertainment had a child murderer and someone that murdered his wife in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah,
They're best of the best.
Yeah, no, definitely should not be in the Hall of Fame.
Especially when their poster boy is John Cena. I have no hate against John Cena or anything, but when your poster boy is John Cena, who's like, take your vitamins, do all that good jazz, mm-hmm. You can't have a child murderer in there.
No. Yeah. I don't think child murderer should get any awards.
No. But, like, and the thing is, all his friends who very much loved him said, we don't think, his own son said he doesn't deserve to be in it.
No, definitely.
Especially definitely not. Because he almost ruined the wrestling business.
Yeah.
Especially, like I'm going to mention here, they thought it was a bad name because they found so much, like 10 months of steroids in Chris's, like, house. Mm-hmm. And it gave them a bad name for, like, steroids, and just proved the point that they're all on drugs, they're all horrible people, blah, blah, blah. It proved what the media already thought about all of that. Even though in the documentary, Chris Jericho said that the wellness policy they had was super tight, and he said it didn't get strict until after Eddie died, because Eddie had a terrible past with drugs, and there was loopholes around it, and there were lots of loopholes, Megan. Mm-hmm. Chris was still taking testosterone, and he passed his wellness test with flying colors. Some people say he was doing testosterone therapy because it's a way you can get off, like, actual steroids. But, like, Nancy sent him a text basically going off on him about his, like, steroid use, and she even called the wellness policy a joke. So she knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the toxicology report and some of the reasons why they think Chris did it. One report from the University of West Virginia showed Benoit's brain was severely damaged. It resembled the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient
Oh
from that
goodness.
fire. And there's a lot of debate with wrestling fans being like, oh yeah, like he didn't have Alzheimer's. He could still cut promos like this and that. They weren't saying that. They're just saying his brain looked like an Alzheimer's patient, not that he had Alzheimer's. Which I can somewhat conceive why they thought that things, but like they never said he did have Alzheimer's. Former wrestler and Harvard graduate Christopher Nowinks, I'm very sorry if I pronounced his name wrong, who was a friend to Chris, they actually wrestled together, has since gone on to do groundbreaking in the field of sports-related concussion trauma and etc. He wrote a bunch of books, and he had claimed that Chris Benoit had suffered from multiple repeated and untreated concussions throughout his wrestling career, which if you know wrestling back then, they basically said suck it up and go out there. Which now they have gotten really good about worrying about TE and all that stuff because of all of this. They said untreated concussion, blah, 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 ultimately leading to his unstable mental state, which I believe. Other Chris, whose name I cannot pronounce, said that Benoit was one of the only guys who could take a chair shot to the back of the head, which is very stupid. He said that, not me, but I agree. Chris had even been approached by Benoit and asked, like, about his research and stuff, and he's like, and Chris's last name I can't pronounce, asked Benoit, how many have you had? And he's like, too many to count. Which, concussions, not a good thing.
No, definitely not.
No, like, I had one and was miserable. I couldn't imagine having more than I could count.
No, I unfortunately have never had a concussion that I'm aware of.
Lucky.
Yeah, no, this is a little off topic, but my first year as an RA at an arts program that I worked at, a girl got a concussion on my floor, and myself and the other RAs on the floor, we had to wake her up every 3 hours to make sure that she was okay. It was so stressful.
Okay, they told me that I could sleep is good, so they're like, you don't have to wake up, just sleep.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it depends on the severity of the concussion.
Yeah. And my concussion was okay, I hate to admit this and this go out to the world, but I got a concussion because of an elbow to the head.
Oh no, ouch.
Yes. God bless Kevin. He did not mean to do it. Kevin's a guy I worked with at one of my shows, and I was helping him with a quick change. His elbow accidentally connected to my head, and Kevin is 6'3", all muscle, and I am 5'1", 120, very tiny.
I was going to say, you're itty bitty.
Yeah, it did not end well. I didn't pass out, thank God.
Oh, good.
But, it was still enough to give me a concussion.
Yeah, ouch.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, just sleep it off. And I'm like, okay. And I was out of it. I was noticeably, crazy. So I couldn't imagine having multiple concussions, probably in a constant state of having a concussion. Because chair shots are they actually hit you with them. The way someone described it is you tense up your whole body and grit your teeth and just get hit with one.
Ah.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, professional wrestlers from a certain time period all have it. Even Chavo in the interview was like, I wonder how severe my case of it is.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because hell, even the owner of the company's son took dies off of steel cages that were 20 feet off the ground.
What?
Yeah, honestly, WWE is crazy. And not just WWE, WCW, all, now they're not crazy because now they're screening for that. If a wrestling move has too many injuries, they take it off.
Yeah.
But that wasn't here until after all that happened with Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if they had done that sooner, would Chris still be here? Would like Nancy and Daniel, would they all still
Yeah.
be alive today?
Oh, goodness.
Um, they said Chris had an extremely severe case of it, especially for he was only 40, and they said it was extremely severe.
That's so young.
Yeah, and they said like how they described it. It was it's usually like in the stem and stuff, but it was all through his head, including I think the part that you're emotional. Like
I should know this.
I remember looking it up, but I don't remember what it was. So
Hold on, I got it. So according to healthline.com, the overall system that controls your emotions in your brain is called the limbic system. But specifically, the amygdala is what assesses the emotional value of situations. So that's basically your emotional response.
okay. Well, they had said it had gone into that part of the brain, and so they said it would usually only affect certain parts, but it was very severe.
Oh gosh.
Actually, his wrestling move was a flying headbutt. So he would get off of the top rope and freaking headbutt people flying in the air. And I'm like, that alone, very bad. Okay. And like all the people that did it either end up in a wheelchair, messed up spine, or Chris dead, and they banned that move now. No one can do it. And any move relating to their head, they're like, nah, like bye.
Good.
Yeah, very good. Well, here's some more of the toxicology report. They found, and this is July 17th, 2007, they found 3 different drugs in Nancy's system: hydrocodone, hydromorphone, and Xanax. All 3 drugs were found at levels investigators consider normal for therapeutic treatment as opposed to recreational use or abuse.
Okay, that's good at least.
Yeah. Okay, the alcohol level was found at 0.184 by Dr. Chris Benoit, and he added it was impossible to say whether the blood findings were due to indigestion of alcohol or post-mortem process. It is also ruled out that Nancy was sedated by Chris before she was murdered. Xanax was also found in Daniel's system as well. This goes back to where they believe Daniel was sedated. This is going to sound horrible, but I hope to God he was passed out so he did not suffer at all. I really hope.
I don't think that sounds horrible at all. I mean, for someone to go through, I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like. And I would hope that he didn't have to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the one good thing Chris did. That it sounds horrible, but yeah. Xanax and hydrocodone was also found in Chris's system at the levels investigators called consistent with therapeutic use. Elevated testosterone levels were found in his urine. Investigators believe they suggested it had been taken recently. No artificial steroids were found in Chris's urine, or was there evidence of GBH, contrary to speculation. Benoit also tested negative for blood alcohol. He was sober. There is no real motive for this case at all. Which is a sad part. And there's a bunch of crazy theories, but like we don't have time to get into all those crazy theories. Like a bunch of there's no motive. Like everyone guessed why he did this, why he did that. No one knows. But what's really sad though is WWE did not give support to Chris's alive children.
Why not?
Cutting them all out. A lot of people in the WWE didn't attend Chris's funeral. They kept it super secretive. Because I think they had one for Chris and then a separate one for Nancy and Daniel.
I mean, I can understand maybe not going to his funeral. You know, that's a really shocking revelation that someone who you've looked up to for who knows how many years has committed this awful atrocity. I can understand maybe not going to his funeral. But, I mean, I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, but does the WWE give like a severance package or insurance or anything, or are they privately contracted and so they don't have to do that?
I really don't know. I'm
Okay.
going to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they do have pretty good insurance with them, but like I'm not 100% sure, but like
Yeah, and things could have changed between now and then.
yeah, absolutely. And like what's really sad though is not even 6 months before the murder, they were talking about Chris and Nancy were talking about having another baby, like building an in-laws house.
Yeah.
All this stuff. And no one knew what was happening.
No, that is so tragic because I think it shows how quickly he went downhill and how well he was able to hide it.
Yep. Absolutely. And like I said, no one had a bad word to say about Chris. And fans still talk about how much they love him and stuff. Even though it's very obvious he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And they very tragically lost Nancy and Daniel because of it.
Yeah, I mean, suicide is horrible and tragic, and there's always help out there. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, even if you can't see it. But to take other people out with you is just horrible.
And like, even Vicky said he should have just taken himself, not taken Nancy and Daniel, because Daniel didn't do anything. Nancy didn't do anything, and people seem to forget he did all those horrible things to them. And like, even though they talked about how amazing of a father he was and stuff, he still killed them. Some WWE fans seem to look over that, and that is the tragic case of Nancy, Daniel, and Chris Benoit. Thank you for listening to a Criminally Basic podcast. If you want to find more, find us at a Criminally Basic podcast on Instagram and Twitter.
And check out our sources as well as photos on our website, acriminallybasicpodcast.com.